For 3 days, Sarah Thompson sat inside her home, perplexed by a strange feeling she couldn't shake. It had all started on a Wednesday morning when she noticed a large shadow lurking near her front porch. At first, she thought it was just a trick of the light or maybe a figment of her imagination, but as she approached the window, her breath caught in her throat. A bear. She blinked, unsure if what she was seeing was real. There, in her yard, a massive bear sat calmly in a shaded tree. Its thick, dark fur rippled in the wind, its eyes unblinking, watching her house with an almost unnatural stillness. Sarah stepped back from the window, her heart pounding. She had never seen this bear before. She didn't live anywhere near the woods, and bears were certainly not a common sight in suburban neighborhoods. Was it lost? Was it dangerous? Should she call animal control? But the bear didn't seem threatening. It didn't growl or pace. It simply sat there, as though it had made its home on her lawn. The next day, when Sarah looked out again, the bear was still there, and the day after that, it remained. It didn't leave. It didn't make a sound. It just watched. A week passed. Sarah couldn't bring herself to open the door, even though she had been spending hours just staring at the bear through the window. Something about it felt familiar, as if it were waiting for something. She couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't a random encounter. And the longer the bear stayed, the more she was certain something significant was about to unfold. One evening, as the sun began to set, the bear stood up and slowly walked toward the front door. Sarah's heart raced. Was it time to call for help? She took a deep breath and slowly moved to the door, hand hovering over the knob, as the bear came to a stop right outside. It sat facing her house. It was waiting. Sarah stood frozen in front of the door. The bear, now sitting just a few feet away, its dark eyes locked on hers, was unnervingly still. The evening sun cast long shadows across her porch, the air thick with tension. She swallowed hard, her pulse racing. What was she supposed to do? Call animal control? The police? But something in the back of her mind told her that wasn't the right move. As she hesitated, the bear didn't move, didn't growl. It just stared at her with an intensity that felt almost familiar. It was as though it was waiting for her to do something. The silence between them seemed to stretch on forever, the only sound being the soft rustling of the wind through the trees. With a deep breath, Sarah made up her mind. She was going to open the door. Her hand gripped the doorknob, the cool metal sending a shiver down her spine. She turned it slowly and stepped out onto the porch, her eyes never leaving the bear. It didn't flinch. It didn't move closer. It just remained there, watching her. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she took a cautious step forward. The bear stayed seated, its gaze unwavering. There was no sign of aggression, no growl, just a calm presence that seemed almost comforting. It wasn't what she had expected at all. The bear blinked slowly, as if acknowledging her. Sarah knelt down to make herself less intimidating, her voice trembling slightly as she spoke. "What are you doing here?" The bear didn't answer, of course, but in that moment, Sarah could have sworn it was trying to communicate something. It didn't feel like an animal looking for food or shelter. It felt more like a companion. Just as she was about to take another step, the bear moved slowly, deliberately toward her. Sarah froze, her breath catching in her throat. But the bear didn't approach aggressively. Instead, it simply came close enough to nuzzle her hand, brushing its warm, rough fur against her fingers. A shock of recognition hit her. She had felt this before. Tears pricked her eyes as she slowly began to understand. The bear wasn't just some wild animal. It was here for her. And in that quiet moment, standing there on her front porch, Sarah's heart filled with an overwhelming sense of understanding. This wasn't random. This bear, this creature, had come into her life for a reason. As Sarah stood there, her hand gently resting on the bear's massive head, a flood of memories suddenly rushed back. The warmth of its fur seemed to trigger something deep within her, something she couldn't explain. She closed her eyes for a moment, tried to push aside the thoughts racing through her mind. The bear's steady gaze was comforting, almost familiar. It was as if they had shared a bond long before this moment. The bear nuzzled her hand again, and as she looked down into its dark eyes, something clicked. This wasn't the first time they had met. Her breath caught in her throat. This bear, it couldn't be. It had been years since she had seen that face, that same powerful, knowing expression. She had almost forgotten, buried it deep within her. But now, standing on her porch with the same bear nuzzling her hand, the connection was undeniable. Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered, You saved me that day." The bear didn't respond, of course, but its eyes softened. It seemed to acknowledge her words. Understanding. It wasn't just a coincidence. It wasn't just an animal seeking food or shelter. This bear had come back into her life for a reason, and it wasn't about being lost or in danger anymore. It was about something deeper. The bear stood still, staring at her, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. Sarah felt as though the universe had aligned to bring them together again. This was no random encounter. This bear, who had once guided her to safety, was now here for her again, at her own home. Suddenly, she understood. This bear hadn't just saved her life that day. It had been watching over her all these years, and now it was here to protect her once again. As Sarah stood there, her hand still resting on the bear's warm, rough fur, a wave of emotion surged through her. The bear's eyes held a depth of understanding that left her breathless. It wasn't just a wild animal. It was something more. She had felt this before, but now it was becoming clearer. A long-buried memory from her childhood began to surface, one she hadn't thought about in years. She slowly stepped back, her heart racing as the bear remained calm, its gaze never leaving her. The bear's presence felt comforting, like an old friend returning after a long time apart. Suddenly, the realization hit her like a thunderclap. This bear wasn't a stranger. It was familiar, too familiar. A memory flooded back. When Sarah was a little girl, she had spent several summers at her grandparents' house deep in the countryside. She remembered playing in the vast open fields, running through the grass with her cousins. But most of all, she remembered the day she had met a bear. It had been a rescue, she now recalled. A bear that had been raised and protected by her grandfather. The bear had been a part of their lives, their family, before being taken to a sanctuary. Sarah's grandfather had always spoken of the bear as if it were a member of the family, a bond forged through years of trust and understanding. Her grandfather had passed away many years ago, but Sarah couldn't help but feel that this was somehow connected. The bear in front of her now was the same one from her childhood. She had never forgotten the way it had looked at her, with such knowing eyes. With trembling hands, Sarah reached out again. The bear, understanding her hesitation, lowered its head, allowing her to gently touch its fur. The connection was undeniable. The bear had returned, and it had come to her for a reason. A rush of tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered, "It's you, isn't it? It's really you." The bear let out a soft growl, almost as if an acknowledgement, then turned its head toward the house, as though signaling for her to follow. Sarah stood frozen, unsure what was happening, but she knew one thing for certain. The bear had come for a reason, and it was time for her to understand why. As Sarah stood on the porch, the bear's dark eyes locked onto hers, silently urging her to follow. There was a quiet, undeniable pull in its gaze, as though it knew something she didn't, something she needed to understand. The bear took a step back, and then another, waiting for her to move. With every step it took, Sarah felt a sense of urgency inside her, like the bear was leading her to something important, something that had been waiting for a long time. Reluctantly, Sarah followed. The bear moved with slow, deliberate steps, its large, powerful frame making no sound on the porch as it crossed into the yard. Sarah kept a few paces behind, her mind racing. What did it want? Why had it returned after all these years? The bear led her around the back of the house, through the garden where she used to play as a child. The air felt different, charged with an unexplainable energy. As they reached the far end of the yard, the bear stopped in front of a large oak tree, its branches sprawling high above them. Sarah felt a strange sense of recognition. She had spent so many childhood days playing around this very tree. But today, it felt like a different place altogether. The bear turned to face her, and as it did, Sarah noticed something strange at the base of the tree. There, hidden beneath a cluster of thick roots, was a small, weathered box. Her heart skipped a beat. What was this? Why hadn't she seen it before? The bear seemed to nudge the box gently with its nose, then stepped aside, as if granting her permission to open it. Her hands shook as she crouched down, reaching for the box. The wood was old and rough, its surface covered in dust. She opened it slowly, her breath catching her throat as the lid creaked. Inside the box, wrapped in a faded cloth, was a small, intricate medallion. As Sarah picked it up, memories flooded back. Memories of her grandfather, the bear, of the stories he had told her as a child. He had spoken of a medallion, something that had been passed down through generations, a symbol of protection and loyalty. But why had the bear brought it to her now? As if answering her unspoken question, the bear approached her once again, sitting down by her side. Its eyes were filled with understanding, a calm certainty. Sarah looked down at the medallion in her hand, realizing with a shiver that this was the key. The bear hadn't just come back to her. It had come back because she had inherited a responsibility, a role her grandfather had once held. The medallion wasn't just a family heirloom. It was a token of guardianship, meant for someone who would protect the land, the animals, and the legacy her grandfather had left behind. The bear had come to pass this duty on to her. Tears welled up in her eyes as she held the medallion, the weight of it settling in her hands. The bear, sensing her emotions, nuzzled her once more, a reassuring, comforting gesture. In that moment, Sarah understood. The bear had been waiting for her to be ready to understand her true purpose, and now she was ready. The weight of the medallion in her hand felt heavier than it ever had before as she stared at it, a flood of emotions rushing through her. This small, intricate piece of metal was more than just a family heirloom. It was a symbol of a duty she had never known she would inherit. The bear's presence beside her reminded her that she wasn't alone in this. It had come back for a reason, and that reason was her. With a deep breath, Sarah looked down at the bear. Its dark eyes met hers, filled with understanding and trust. There was no fear, no doubt. The bear was patient, knowing that Sarah needed time to fully grasp the magnitude of what was unfolding. But there was no turning back now. Sarah stood slowly, her hands still clutching the medallion. As she looked around the yard, everything seemed to fall into place. The bond between her family, the land, and the bear stretched back generations. Something her grandfather had always known, but never fully explained. Now, it was her turn to carry that legacy. She turned to the bear, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts racing through her mind. "I understand now," she whispered. "I meant protect this land. This legacy." The bear stepped forward, its massive head lowering slightly as if giving its approval. It nudged the medallion gently with its nose, guiding her hand back to her chest. In that moment, Sarah knew the bear wasn't just a guardian. It was her guide. It was here to help her navigate the path ahead. The truth settled in her heart. Her grandfather had known this day would come. He had passed the torch to her, trusting that she would be ready. The bear's return wasn't just a coincidence. It was part of something much larger, something ancient and sacred. As Sarah stood there, her heart filled with resolve, she looked down at the medallion and made a silent promise. She would honor this responsibility. She would protect the land, the animals, and the legacy that had been entrusted to her. The bear stood by her side, its dark fur gleaming in the soft light of the setting sun. It wasn't just a wild animal. It was her partner in this new journey. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The world seemed to pause for a moment as Sarah took her first steps forward. With the bear by her side, she knew she was ready for whatever lay ahead. And with the medallion's weight on her chest, she would never be alone. If this unbelievable story of the bear's mysterious return left you speechless, imagine what other hidden truths are waiting to be uncovered. Don't miss out on more incredible, jaw-dropping tales like this one. Hit that subscribe button. Give this video a like if you believe in the power of unexpected connections, and share with your friends to spark some conversations. You never know, they might be waiting for a story just like this. Join us for more unbelievable moments. See you in the next one.